Good afternoon. Start with some opening comments. Over the past several days, the world has seen broad expressions of support for the proposal that President Biden outlined on Friday for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. I'd like to run through just a few of the statements that we have seen over the past few days. The United Arab Emirates said the proposals are constructive, realistic, and achievable, and both sides must seize them, as they are an opportunity to stop the war, prevent further loss of life, stop the escalation, release prisoners and hostages, and alleviate the catastrophic and dangerous situation that civilians are experiencing in Gaza. Morocco said it welcomed the initiative and hopes the various parties concerned will adhere to it and commit to implementing its various phases. Jordan said it supported efforts to reach a deal as quickly as possible. In a joint statement, the foreign ministers of the Quint, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the UAE, Qatar, and Egypt stressed the importance of dealing seriously and positively with the proposal highlighted by the president on May 31st, with the aim of agreeing on a deal that ensures a permanent ceasefire and the adequate delivery of aid to all parts of the Gaza Strip in a manner that ends the suffering of the people in Gaza. The European Union member states said that they wholeheartedly agree with President Biden and that the latest proposal is a significant opportunity to move towards an end to war and civilian suffering. Last night, the G7 said it too fully endorses and will stand behind the deal. And it called on Hamas to accept it and urged countries with influence over Hamas to help ensure that it does so. Over the past 24 hours, Secretary Blinken has continued his diplomatic engagements to stress the importance of finalizing this deal. He spoke yesterday with the foreign minister of Morocco and earlier today with the foreign ministers of Algeria and Saudi Arabia, his second conversation with the Saudi foreign minister since Friday. He also met earlier today with United Nations Secretary General Guterres. In all of these conversations, he has continued to echo the broad international view that Hamas must accept this deal, that we must finalize this ceasefire agreement and begin to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people. In addition, the Secretary has been emphasizing to partners the importance of the Security Council speaking out to call for implementation of this deal without delay and without further conditions. Yesterday, the United States circulated a new draft Security Council resolution supporting the proposal to end the fighting in Gaza, and we urge all members of the Council to support that resolution. The international community must continue to insist that Hamas accept this deal. The proposal on the table is nearly identical to what Hamas said it would accept just a few weeks ago. Israel has said it is ready to implement it. It is time to finalize this agreement, put an end to the violence, and to build a better future for both Palestinians and Israelis alike. That, Matt.
So, along those lines, the very intense focus, your very intense focus since Friday has been on, or appears to be, at least from the readouts that you've just been outlining, on getting Hamas to accept this deal. And you keep saying that the Israelis have already, it was their idea, or it's their proposal, and they've already agreed to it. And yet, are you really convinced that that's the case? And are you convinced that the focus should be entirely on Hamas?
So we are convinced it is the case that Israel is ready to implement this deal. As I said, it's their proposal put forward by the government, and they have maintained to us they are ready to implement it. Doesn't mean there aren't voices inside Israel, and voices even inside the Israeli government are opposed to it. But the government, speaking on behalf of the government, has said they support this proposal and are ready to stand behind that, and we take them at their word. The deal is in front of Hamas. It is to Hamas to accept or reject or come back and say they want to further negotiate the deal. But it is just the facts of it that Israel has agreed to this proposal and it now stands with Hamas.
Right. And what has been, other than all these statements of support, what has been the impact that you've seen from Hamas?
We haven't seen any response yet from Hamas. But we do think it is important that the international community and, I think quite importantly, countries in the Arab world have spoken out to call on this deal to be finalized and Hamas to accept it. It's important. I think the world, you never say the world is speaking with one voice because there's always a dissident country here or there. But when you see the broad support from Europe, from the Arab world, from countries in the global South, I think it's a significant statement of of the opportunity that we have here and how it's important that we not miss this opportunity.
Okay, sorry, which countries from the global South?
I'll get you a list. We have other lists as well. Saudi Arabia is often considered global South country, signed on the I know.
It is?
I have seen them considered as a global south country. Yeah, and we have a full list. I have
Is the equator no
so
longer
I share that. It is not. It is
all right. Well, let's ask about a country.
But I'll take. I have let me just say one thing.
South,
I have a long list of countries in
South Africa.
I have a long list of countries in
Argentina.
my. Let me just finish. I have a long list of countries in my back in my office. I can send you statements of support, including a number from the global south. But specific to those countries, I will tell you our diplomacy continues to try to.
India
push,
is often considered part of the global south,
try to
even though
push
it's north of the equator.
to try to push.
Are they
there
on
you go. There's another one north of the equator.
Well, right, but are they on your list?
So I have not seen a statement from India, but look, we continue to push for every country in the world.
Okay,
to
so
support this deal.
none of the BRICS.
I do not have
Which
the whole
is
list in
often
my.
referred
So,
to.
yeah, they're not all of the global south.
No, I know, but they're often referred to as speaking for, but none of them have.
I have not seen a statement from India. They've been in election the last few days, doing a few other things.
And a follow-up
So,
India?
let me just. I will definitely come to India. I suspect there will be more Middle East questions. So let me.
Can I just push that
Yeah.
slightly? It goes along the lines of what Matt was asking, but the Qataris, of course, who are playing a key role in this, they said basically that they don't see a unified position from Israel. I know you're saying that the onus is on Hamas, but the fact that you do have dissonant voices within the Israeli government, do you think that complicates things at all in terms of getting a response from Hamas or moving this forward?
Look, I think some of the when you talk about let me separate. First of all, there are clearly people inside Israel and inside the Israeli government who are opposed to any kind of ceasefire at all and want the war to continue and have not seen to make the return of the hostages a priority. But that said, there's also debate inside Israel about how you get from phase one to phase two. So I think it's fair to say there are people who would support acceptance of the ceasefire that is on the table, and they're going to have significant things that they want to negotiate in phase two, and we fully expect that. That's natural. We understand that the negotiation to get from phase one to phase two is going to be something that will require a great deal of work. But here's the point. You're not even at that point if we don't get a phase one. We need to get a ceasefire so we can get to the point where we're having negotiations about how to bring a durable end to the war, because without a ceasefire, we're not even at that point. We just have a continued military campaign and continued death and destruction inside Gaza, and hostages continue to be held away from their loved ones. So our focus is trying to get Hamas signed up to this deal so we can get phase one underway. And then 16 days into phase one, we will begin negotiations about how to take phase one to phase two. And we are committed to trying to get it over the line. Qatar and Egypt are committed to trying to get it over the line. And Israel has said that it's Israel's proposal. So while there will be details that have to be negotiated, we believe Israel's committed to negotiating that as well.
Matt, U.S. House of Representatives is due to vote on this legislation that would sanction ICC after its prosecutor applied for arrest warrant for Netanyahu and others. The U.S. State Department supports this?
So we have made clear that while we oppose the decision taken by the prosecutor of the ICC, we don't think it was appropriate, especially while there are ongoing investigations inside Israel looking at some of these very same questions. And we are willing to work with Congress on what a response might look like. We don't support sanctions.
Right, and what would that response look like then if you don't support sanctions?
So that is a consultation that we will have with Congress. I'm not going to preview it from here. Those are discussions we need to have with members of Congress. But our position as the administration is that we don't support sanctions, don't believe they're appropriate at this time.
Right. One other thing is this Time interview with President Biden. In there, he says when he was asked if Israeli forces have committed war crimes in Gaza, he says it's uncertain. The fact that he did not say an outright no, don't you think that's something that the State Department should consider launching an atrocity determination on, given that you've also said in your NSM report that it is possible that there may have been violations?
So we do have processes ongoing to look at whether there have been violations of international humanitarian law.
Is atrocity determination one of them?
I'm not going to speak to that in specific, but that's why the president says the answer to that question is uncertain, is because we don't know the answer. It's something that we have an ongoing process to look at and to try to get an answer to. But at this time, we don't know the answer, and that's what we made clear in the National Security Memo 20 report, is that we are looking at those various questions and making those assessments now.
Right. So you're just saying that we don't know if Israeli forces have committed war crimes in Gaza or not? You said we don't know.
I would go a bit further and say that we said we don't know the definitive answer to it, but the
Right.
NSM-20 report said it's reasonable to conclude that they may have, given the sheer number of incidents, but we need to finish these processes to have definitive answers to the question.
So despite these assessments, you think there is no change in the U.S. policy to continue providing arms to Israel?
There is no change in our policy. As you know, we've paused one shipment. We have not, but we have not changed our overall policy, and we will continue to support Israel's security.
Thank you, Matt. There are reports
I didn't mean
that
to call on you if you didn't have your hand up.
Oh, no,
Just
I
going
did.
along
I just-
going along the front row.
there are reports that the CIA director and Brett McGurk are heading back to the region in furtherance of potential hostage and ceasefire talks. Do you expect that the secretary will engage in in-person diplomacy in the region as well?
So the secretary has been engaged, as I discussed in my opening comments and I discussed yesterday, in a number of phone conversations with partners in the region over the past now 4 days since Friday's announcement. And he will be traveling to Europe, leaving tonight to join the president for his trip to Normandy and then a bilateral visit with France. And I don't have any further travel to announce beyond that.
Okay. And I know you said that there has been no response received as yet from Hamas. Is it known from either Egyptian or Qatari interlocutors whether the proposal has actually reached Yahya Sinwar for his evaluation, even if a response hasn't come back?
I don't know an answer to that question.
Okay, have we?
I don't believe we know.
Okay. On aid, you mentioned yesterday that there were constructive discussions that took place in Cairo. Obviously, a number of international aid groups have been raising alarms that the situation is dire and getting worse by the day. So where do efforts to reopen Rafah stand, and what is the broader aid picture in terms of what the U.S. is facilitating on a daily basis?
So with respect to the opening of Rafah, there were conversations over the weekend in Cairo between the United States, Israel, and the government of Egypt that focused on how to get Rafah open. We found them to be constructive discussions. There were detailed proposals that were put forth by the various parties. And then, as often happens in these sorts of negotiations, the negotiators had to go back to their countries, consult with their capitals, and continue discussions. So there are a number of proposals that are on the table that need to be fleshed out. There are different ways you could go about reopening Rafah that we are working through. Separate from that, though it's of course related, the question of humanitarian assistance, we have continued to work to get humanitarian assistance back flowing through Kerem Shalom after the decision about 10, 11 days or so ago made by Egypt to allow trucks to move through Kerem Shalom. Yesterday, I think it was somewhere around 250 trucks that went in through Kerem Shalom. I'm probably off by a dozen or so because I'm doing this from memory. Other trucks that went in through one of the crossings in the north, the majority of those were humanitarian assistance trucks, so trucks by the UN and partner agencies, not commercial trucks. Generally, over the past few days, we've continued to see a mix of commercial trucks and humanitarian assistance. We want to see both. We think it's important that there be both, and we're looking to maximize as many as possible coming through all of the various crossings. Third thing I'll say, maybe I've lost count, is that the Pentagon continues to work to try to reestablish the maritime option, get that pier up and running so we can flow assistance through there. But then the big question overhanging all of this is the status of the ceasefire proposal, which would alleviate all of these various logistical problems that make it so hard to move humanitarian assistance in through a conflict, would make all of those not 100% go away, but would make them, in many cases, evaporate or be at least significantly lessened. So the push for a ceasefire deal is inherently related to the push to try to dramatically increase the level of humanitarian assistance that makes it to the people of Gaza.
One more, just to tag on to Humayra's question about President Biden's remarks in this recent interview. Is the Secretary of the view that Prime Minister Netanyahu may be prolonging the conflict in an effort to stay in office?
I don't think that's exactly what the president said. I think he said that some people could conclude that. Look, the president's comments speak for themselves. I'm not going to add anything to that. But I will just say we have been engaged with the Prime Minister on this question, and the Prime Minister has put forward a proposal on behalf of the the Israeli government that would lead to a ceasefire and ultimately could lead to the end of the war, pending other negotiations, and we're trying to get that ceasefire over.
The president said there's every reason for people to draw that conclusion without commenting permanently.
Right.
So just one follow-up. I mean, so the proposal is on the table as a contingency, have you had any indication that the Israelis are also planning for a day after scenario, as you have urged them to do?
We've seen the defense minister come out and make public statements about possible day after scenarios. You've seen, obviously, statements from Minister Gantz, member of the War Cabinet, about the need to do day after planning. We have still not seen the kind of rigorous planning for the end of the conflict that we think is essential. And as you've heard us say, this isn't just about the end of the conflict, because in our view, without a plan for the day after, there won't be a day after. Without a plan for post-conflict governance and some kind of political transition, you're not going to have an end of the conflict. You're just going to have a continued insurgency and Israel being bogged down fighting against Hamas or Hamas's successors for years and years to come.
I have another on Ukraine.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Just to follow up on Olivia about the interview in Time magazine, I thought the president was very clear that it is Mr. Netanyahu's desire to keep this war going, because he sees his political future, or the continuation of his political future, in the continuation of the war. But also that comes along his statement by the Prime Minister himself, who called the proposal incomplete, making remarks that seemed aimed at sabotaging the deal and so on. So, but you are, I don't know how that meshes with the fact with what you said, that Israel will agree. If Hamas agrees to this proposal, Israel is going to agree to it. There's an element of certainty in what you're saying.
So, a good deal of that certainty, Said, comes from the fact that this is Israel's proposal. It's not a United States proposal. Just to make that very clear. The president outlined it publicly, but this was a proposal the government of Israel put forward. So, look, I understand why some people are cynical or have questions or look for ways that this deal might be completed. It doesn't change the bottom line right now, which is there is a proposal on the table that Israel put forward, that the United States is backing, that Egypt is backing, that Qatar is backing, but not just those three countries who are mediators, but also a good number of countries around the world. And it is only Hamas that is saying no. Now, if you want to talk about how we get from phase 1 to phase 2, that is a fair question to ask, because there will be a great deal of negotiation that has to go on. But we can't even get there if Hamas doesn't say yes.
Okay, so, Hamas is supposed to say something today, I guess. The spokesperson is going to hold a press conference in Beirut or somewhere else and, say their say, whatever it is. So if they agree, how do you see what kind of time frame we have to begin the ceasefire, to start, to actually seize the guns from firing?
So I don't want to get ahead of what Hamas would say, but we would expect it to agree as soon as to begin as soon as possible. We want a ceasefire start. We want to see it start immediately. So that is our goal. That's what we're working towards.
Because you also
it may take time to implement the various provisions.
Because you also
we want it as
said-
soon as possible.
So you also said yesterday that this was very close or identical to the proposal that Hamas signed on to on May 6th and so on. And now, suppose this falls apart or doesn't come to be. How will that impact your plans for aid?
We will continue to work to try to surge aid into to Gaza. We have been doing that
Right.
when ceasefire negotiations have been going well. We have been doing that when ceasefire negotiations have completely broken down, because our commitment to trying to get aid to innocent Palestinians has nothing to do with the status of ceasefire negotiations.
Including the reopening of Rafah?
Yes,
Do you expect-
including the reopening of Rafah. Yeah. I promise I'll come to you. Any more on the region? Go ahead.
Yeah, related to Israel, how do you view the escalation of fightings between Hezbollah and Israel? And do you expect a total war, especially that there are calls from the left and the right in Israel for a full-blown war against Hezbollah?
The situation along the Israeli-Hezbollah border continues to be extremely dangerous. Escalation of that conflict is something that we have been worried about and working to contain since October 7th, when you didn't have to be a genius to figure out that this was a possible significant area of conflict and of expanded conflict. And so that has been our focus, trying to keep it from moving from shelling across the border and airstrikes across the border to a full-fledged conflagration. I will say it is our assessment that the acceptance of a ceasefire by Hamas and the beginning of a calm would help us reach calm in northern Israel and southern Lebanon, and would be the thing that would help us reach both temporary calm and potentially a long-term agreement to resolve the situation that would allow Israelis to return to their homes in northern Israel. There are tens of thousands of Israelis who have been forced to move from their homes because it's not safe to live there. They could return home. And a number of Lebanese who have been forced to flee their homes in southern Lebanon who would be able to return home too. So it's something that we're pursuing, but it is really difficult to do as long as there is continued fighting in Gaza. So it's obviously not the sole reason or the main reason we're pursuing an end to the fighting in Gaza, but it is something that we think would be a significant byproduct of achieving a ceasefire there.
And any comments on the Israeli calls for a full-blown war with Hezbollah?
So we do not support a full war with Hezbollah. We don't want to see that happen. Now, that said, Israel has the right to defend itself from Hezbollah's attacks. Hezbollah is a terrorist organization that is committed to the destruction of Israel and has launched attacks against Israel for years. And so Israel has the right to defend itself and has the right to deal with that threat. You can understand why it is not a tenable situation for Israel to see tens of thousands of its citizens continue to be displaced from their homes and why they would want to do something about it. But ultimately, we've heard Israeli leaders say the solution that they prefer is a diplomatic solution, and obviously that is the solution that we prefer too and that we're trying to pursue.
And one more, if you don't mind. The Iran Supreme Leader has said in a speech yesterday that October 7th attack came at the right time, and the action thwarted the grand plan of the Middle East region. Do you have any comments on that?
So it goes to something you've heard the Secretary say before, which is there are two paths for this region. One is a path to greater integration, greater peace, greater stability, greater commonality among the peoples of the region. And the other path is continued conflict and death and destruction and despair. And we obviously support the first path. But it's also quite clear that the biggest opponents to further integration in the region, further peace in the region, stability, are Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, the other proxy groups that Iran funds. So when you look at the possibilities that lie in front of the region in the long term, if we can achieve a ceasefire, the possibility of greater integration that would bring peace to Israelis and peace to Palestinians and further stability in the region. It's why we believe the greatest rebuke to Hamas and its sponsor, and the greatest rebuke to those who support the attacks of October 7th would be not just this initial ceasefire, but long-term peace and stability that leaves Israel further integrated with its neighbors.
Thank you.
Shannon.
Thanks. Just quickly circling back to Qatar and the statement from its foreign ministry questioning Israel's position. Are you fully confident that Qatar is putting as much pressure as it possibly can on Hamas to accept the deal, given that the U.S. and Qatar apparently are on different pages?
We are not on different pages. And I will say that, yes, I am confident that we have had a number of conversations with the government of Qatar about this exact question, going back without giving away too much to the immediate days right after October 7th. And have always made clear that there can't be any more business as usual with Hamas for countries in the region. But at the same time, we have valued the role that Qatar has played in being a channel to Hamas, in being able to mediate this potential hostage deal, as well as the last pause, the one-week pause that they were able to mediate that happened last November. And so we greatly value the role that Qatar has played, including on sending the appropriate level of messages to Hamas. Yeah.
Could I follow up slightly on Iran, actually?
Yeah.
I know this is slightly a segue. The IAEA, could you explain what's going on there? I mean, the European powers have talked about a reprimand, a censure. Iran, of course, is sit back at this. What's the U.S. position? I mean, it's been widely reported that the U.S. doesn't think that it's the right time for a censure.
So I'm not going to preview any of actions that we might take at the IAEA Board of Governors. I'll just say that we have taken significant actions at the IAEA in the past. We are prepared to do so again in the future, and we continue to talk with our partners, including the E3, about exactly what those might look like.
And a censure, do you think it's not productive at this time?
Again, I'm going to keep those conversations private for now. They're conversations that are ongoing as part of the Board of Governors meetings. But as I've said, we've taken significant actions in the past and are prepared to do so in the future.
I don't think he's asking you for the details of the actual conversations. He's asking you what the administration's position is.
And
correct?
He is, and those are positions. As I said,
I
it's
don't
an
see how
issue that
has
we are.
anything to do with your
it is-
conversations with
it-
anybody
it-
else.
It
It's
does
what-
have. It does have something to do with our conversations with the
Oh.
private. The content, nature of a resolution, potential resolution, is absolutely something that would be
No, but
we'd be
what-
talking about with our
but-
partners.
Right, but what's your
Should there-
position
should-
on a censure?
Should there be a resolution, you will see the United States position when that resolution comes forward. But I think you should not expect us to be acting in any sort of disharmony with our E3 partners. We've prized our unity with them, and I expect that to continue.
I have another on Iran, sort of separate. Does the U.S. have clarity on these Israeli airstrikes in Syria that appear to have killed an Iranian general? Is it asked for information as to the target and intent of the
We do
attacks?
not. I've seen the reports, but don't have any further information on it.
Have you consulted with the Israeli government
I,
as to their
I
purpose?
just don't have any information other than that we've seen the reports.
Given the background of it rising to a almost global conflagration when this happened last time in April, shouldn't it kind of top the list?
I may have something to say later, but as I said, for now, just reports that we've seen, don't have anything further.
Thanks.
So, go ahead.
Thank you. My own questions, but before that, let me follow up on the Secretary's schedule. You said he's leaving tonight. Can you elaborate more on his schedule, any bilats in Normand, and when is he hoping to show up in Switzerland?
What was the last part?
In Switzerland, for peace.
So, with respect to the initial part of this trip, he's traveling with the president. He's going to be in Normandy and then in Paris. His schedule will largely follow the president's schedule. If we have any separate programming meetings or such to announce, we will make those public in the coming days. With respect to dates beyond that, I think a week beyond that, I don't have anything further to announce.
Right. A couple of questions on the EU elections. There are reports about increasing Russian disinformation campaign in Europe. What's your level of concern about those reports?
So we have been incredibly concerned about Russian disinformation. This was a significant subject of conversation at the NATO foreign ministers meeting last week in Prague, something the Secretary raised and not only raised, but then heard significant concern about from our European partners. We have seen the Russian government use disinformation against its own people. We have seen the Russian government use disinformation to spread lies and rumors across Europe and across the world, and we continue to consult with our partners about the best way to respond to that.
Kremlin is also echoing Georgian government's propaganda. Today we heard from Deputy Foreign Minister saying that the U.S. is planning to implement a new Maidan in October in Georgia. Do you have any response to that?
So, look, you continue to see, I think the answer I just gave about disinformation that you see from the Kremlin probably applies here pretty well. What you have seen in Georgia is, over the past few weeks, is the Georgian people's expression of their will and their opposition to this Kremlin-backed law that the Georgian government has passed. It has nothing to do with the United States. It has to do with the people of Georgia expressing their own views.
Thank you. And finally, on Ukraine, we have seen a letter came from the House Foreign Affairs Committee urging the Secretary, both the Secretary of State and Treasury, to speed up in terms of implementing the REPO Act. Where are you at this, and why is it delay?
So the Secretary has made quite clear that we have been given those authorities and we plan to use them, but it's also important that we use them in concert with our European and other allies. As I think you know, the vast majority of the frozen Russian assets are not held in the United States. They're held in European countries. So for this action to be as effective as possible, it's important that we act in concert with our allies, and we are in consultation with our European allies about the best way to do that possible. But we are committed to ensuring that Russian frozen assets remain immobilized and that they're put to use for the benefit of the Ukrainian people.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you about India's elections. After 3 months, the people of India have voted. Election results are out now. Prime Minister Modi's ruling coalition has crossed the halfway mark. How do you see the election results from the elections?
So first of all, our understanding is that the election results have not been finalized, so we will wait for the finalization of those election results before we offer any definitive comment. I'm also not going to comment on winners and losers in election, as is our case around the world. What is important for us and what we have seen over the past 6 weeks is the largest exercise of democracy in history as the Indian people came to the polls. And on behalf of the United States, we want to commend the government of India and voters there for successfully completing and participating in such a massive electoral undertaking, and we look forward to seeing the final results.
During the election campaign, India's External Affairs Minister Jaishankar and Prime Minister also indicated multiple times that there have been attempts to influence the India's elections from Western side, with US and other countries. Two statements that came out from this podium about you expressed concerns about arrest of Indian Chief Minister and the freezing of bank accounts of the Congress Party were also not taken right. How do you see that?
So we always will express our views clearly and openly. We express them with foreign governments privately, and when we have things that we are concerned about, we also express them publicly, including from this podium. That's what I've done, but that in no way is attempt to influence an election in India or anywhere else.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Another one.
Thank you, sir. Two questions. One, how do you put relations between U.S.-India relations today and tomorrow, Modi 3? How the relations will be between the two countries?
So I expect a continued close partnership between the United States and India. There is a great partnership both at the government level, at the and at the people-to-people level, and I fully expect that to continue.
And second, sir, there are a few actors against the United States working these days, including Russia and China, maybe a few others. Who are the worst as far as the U.S. national security is concerned, Russia or China?
Look, it is clear that it is Russia that has invaded a country right now, is actively trying to overthrow a democratically elected government, and it's required the United States to mobilize an international coalition to respond to that. But we also have concerns about actions that China has taken. Look, it's clear that Russia and China are the two countries, both with the size and ability and motivation to offer a different vision of the world than that is put forward by the United States and a number of our allies. And so we will continue to offer our vision of the world and continue to stand up to either of those countries when we see actions that contradict that.
Thank you, sir.
Humera.
On India election follow.
Humera. Yeah, go ahead.
Excellency, this is, I mean, come on.
Can I ask?
Yeah, yes, call
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. So 27 members so far, Muslim members, have been winning in the elections in India. You really think that India is becoming secular? Because when President Biden was running for elections, one of the issues was that Prime Minister Modi is turning India into a Hindu state where there are more than 300 Muslims. 27 seats they are so far winning. Modi is winning the election, but you have to admit that under President Biden, a leader is coming who is turning a country into a one religion, a Hindu state, basically, right? Would you agree with that?
So I will say that when we have concerns about human rights, as we have in India, we express those openly. We express them directly to the government of India. We have done that and will continue to do it as we do with countries all around the world.
Thank you so much. Can I just ask one more?
Yeah.
The Pakistan military 83rd Corps Commanders Conference met just a couple of days ago, and they came up with this term called digital terrorism, where they think that public in the US and Canada and UK mostly, through digital platforms, they are spreading terrorism and creating anarchy sort of situation. Do you have any comments about that?
I have not seen that specific report or that allegation, but obviously we oppose terrorism or any attempts to recruit people to terrorism or foment terrorism anywhere in the world.
Digital terrorism.
I'm saying I haven't seen that report. But
okay. Thank you so much, Matt.
Can you just quickly follow up?
Yeah, go ahead.
India has world's second largest number of Muslim population after Indonesia. None of the other Muslim countries have that much Muslim population as India has. Why do you think India is converting into a Hindu?
I'm just not going to speak to that question. Go ahead, Humera.
Matt, just to go back to Hezbollah a minute ago, I just want to make sure I heard what you said. I heard right what you said. So you said U.S. does not support a full-blown war in the border?
It's not what we want to see. We don't want to see a full-blown war. We want to see this resolved by a diplomatic resolution.
Sure. So are you saying that U.S. is against the possible offensive that Israel is talking about carrying out?
So we want to see it resolved through diplomatic means, and that's what we have been pursuing. I also said that Israel has a right to defend itself, and it is not a tenable situation for tens of thousands of people to continue to be displaced from their homes. But what we've heard Israel say is that their preferred resolution is a diplomatic one, and we agree with that.
Right, but they're also saying today, Military Chief of General Staff Herzi Halevi is saying Israel is ready for a military offensive along the border, and that it was nearing a decision point. So what is your comment for that?
Our comment is that we want to see it resolved by diplomatic means. We want to see ceasefire agreed to in Gaza that would allow us to pursue a diplomatic resolution in the north.
Have you
this could all be solved by a ceasefire, and that's what
have
we're
you told the
pursuing.
Israelis in the past couple of days or today specifically about these, like advise them not to do it?
So I don't know of any recent conversations with them, but we have had this conversation with them for a long time, and Israel has made clear they don't want a war in the north. A war in the north would tax their resources, which have already been taxed by the conflict in Gaza. This goes to the thing that the secretary has talked about, and I talked about a little bit about yesterday, where we look all of it and you see the potential of Israel being bogged down in Gaza, fighting a war in the north. If you have further instability in the West Bank, and as the president said, that drains them diplomatically, economically, militarily, and it's not a strategic success for them. So we have heard Israel say, publicly and privately, that their preferred resolution is a diplomatic one. Now, should we not get a ceasefire in Gaza? Should they continue to see strikes in the north? I don't know what will happen, but we will continue to focus on trying to achieve a diplomatic resolution to this conflict. It is not in anyone's interest to see escalation along the border between Israel and Lebanon.
And from U.S. point of view, would it be unacceptable for Israel to start this offensive in the north in the event of a ceasefire in Gaza?
So I'm not going to get into hypotheticals. As I said, we don't believe it is in their interest.
They're saying they're ready for it.
They have said that is different than launching. They have said it is not something they want to pursue either if they can pursue a diplomatic resolution. At the same time, the situation we do understand is untenable, so it does give urgency to the diplomatic negotiations to resolve that problem, and connected to that for Hamas to reach a ceasefire.
Matt, one follow-up.
Yeah.
Please. Are you confident that you will be able to find a diplomatic solution for the fightings and for the crisis between Hezbollah and Israel?
Look, obviously, we can't make any predictions about what would happen. That would involve, of course, Hezbollah being willing to agree to a resolution as well. But we do believe that if we can get calm in Gaza, that it dramatically increases our chance. It unlocks the real possibility of calming the situation in the north, which does not need to be at the level it is today. It wasn't at this level before October 7th. It was the fight. There's always been obviously tension along that border and strikes and even wars that have been fought over that border. But we have seen an increase in strikes across the border after October 7th. And should we reach a ceasefire in Gaza, we think it's something we have a good chance of resolving. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Matthew. So I'm really confused by this proposal that the president said Israel put forth. There seems to be a misunderstanding between the sides, and there are conflicting reports. Israel says its objectives have not changed, yet this deal would not say result in the elimination of Hamas. Prime Minister Netanyahu said some of what President Biden said in his speech on Friday is inaccurate. Can you please clarify?
So I think some of this goes to what has to be negotiated in getting to phase 1 and phase 2. Israel has agreed to the proposal that includes all of the elements of the proposal, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. But as the president said in his remarks, the details of how you get to phase 2 are going to have to be negotiated. And that's what we were prepared to do.
But it doesn't require Hamas to be gone, right?
So we have made clear that Hamas cannot continue to govern Gaza. We also don't believe that you can eliminate Hamas just with a military campaign, that a military campaign can kill fighters, can detain fighters, trade or support violence in the West Bank, and we will not hesitate to continue to do so.
And finally, Samantha Power, the Samantha Power said that Israel is the chief impediment to Gaza aid. How do you assess what she said?
So I won't speak to her comments. I'll let my USAID colleagues speak to them. I think if you look at the full substance, she was speaking to the conflict ongoing being the chief impediment to getting aid in, and that is manifestly the case. You can get aid, even when you can get aid to Kerem Shalom, it's often difficult to get it distributed inside Gaza because people are moving to new places and there's ongoing conflict. That's been a challenge throughout that we will continue to work through. But two things in that regard. Number one, so there were just officials from the U.S. government who met in Cairo yesterday with officials from Egypt and from Israel to try work on a solution to reopen Rafah Gate. There were constructive discussions, professional, and we'll continue to pursue them in the coming days because we want to see Rafah open because that would be another gate to allow humanitarian assistance in. And then second, back to the bigger point, if we could get a ceasefire, if Hamas would agree to this ceasefire proposal, we could get 600 trucks a day coming in, and not just coming in, but it would be much, much easier for them to move safely around Gaza and get humanitarian aid in the hands of the people that who need it. Nadia.
Thank you, Matt. Prime Minister Netanyahu said neither Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority will play a role in the day after in Gaza. Do you agree that the Palestinian Authority should be excluded from playing any role?
No, we do not. We've made quite clear we see a role for the Palestinian Authority in the governance of Gaza after this conflict.
So do you see this as a point of that might be not acceptable for Israel in terms of this proposal that the president put forward?
So when it comes to all of those issues about who would govern Gaza at the end of this conflict, I'll say two things. One, it is something that we have been, as you know well, discussing with Arab partners in the region. It's been a good subject of the work that we have done, and as well as the work that we have done to encourage the Palestinian Authority to take steps to reform itself. So not just Israelis could have faith in the Palestinian Authority, but so the Palestinian people could have faith in the Palestinian Authority, governing as a non-corrupt, faithful actor in the interests of the Palestinian people. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that we are going to continue to engage with the Israeli government about this. And there are a diversity of views inside the Israeli government about the Palestinian Authority and the role that they ought to play and the future that they ought to play in governance in Gaza. And we're going to continue to make clear to them that we think a revitalized, reformed, fully functional Palestinian Authority is in the best interest of the Palestinian people. It's in the best interest of Israel, and it's especially in the best interest of Israel's security.
Okay, I want to have another go at the previous questions on Hamas. The president said that Hamas capabilities have been degraded to the degree that they don't pose a threat equivalent to the October 7th. Would you entertain or accept some kind of political presence for Hamas? Or do you think that is going to be a situation analogous to the de-Baathification that we have seen in Iraq after the war, which is de-Hamization, if I don't know if the term applies, but basically that nobody will be allowed to take part in any kind of shape or form of a civil authority, of local authority, whatever. We're not talking about the military brigade.
So I'm not going to get into any level of detail because we're just not at that point in the process. But I will say, at a high level, it is the strongly held view of the United States that we will continue to push that Hamas can play no role in the governance of Gaza. It has lost any legitimate claim it ever had, and we didn't think it had one to begin with, but it's lost any legitimate claim to participate in the governance of Gaza by virtue of launching a brutal massacre of 1,200 Israelis on October 7th.
And finally, Saudis and Qataris has condemned an Israeli Knesset attempt, or a bill actually, to label UNRWA as a terrorist organization. Do you condemn this attempt by the Israeli Knesset to do that?
So I was not aware of that vote. Obviously, we do not believe UNRWA is a terrorist organization. There were members of UNRWA who UNRWA provided evidence had participated in some way in the attacks of October 7th, but that is not but that is not actions by UNRWA, the body itself. So that's our general position, but I can't speak to the specific vote because I'm not familiar with the specifics.
I want you to clarify this. UNRWA has provided evidence that some members were
I should say they briefed us on evidence that they found. Yeah, at the beginning of this, I've gone through this a few times. At the beginning of this entire issue with regard to UNRWA, a lot of people think we took the action that we took to suspend UNRWA's funding because of something the Israeli government told us, and that's not the case. It was UNRWA that came to us and said they were aware of these allegations. They had looked into them, found evidence that certain members of UNRWA had participated in the attacks of October 7th, and so had suspended and fired for 13, 14, I don't remember the exact number now, and that's why we took the action we did.
And you can update us on the investigation because it's been a few months now?
I can't because it's not a U.S. government investigation. It's a United Nations investigation. I would refer you to them to speak to that.
Matt, could I have clarification on your engagement with the PA? Are you engaged with the Palestinian Authority right now?
Yeah, we have conversations with the...
Where are the whereabouts of Mr. Hadi Amr, for instance? Is he engaged?
He travels back and forth between here and the region quite regularly. I don't know if he's here or in the region today, but he engages regularly with the Palestinian Authority, as do officials in our embassy in Jerusalem. stay in the region. Any more? Yeah, go ahead.
Matt, did you hear back from the Israeli regarding the investigation on the strike in last weekend?
We have not been. We have not. Well, number one, I don't know if the investigation has concluded, but in any event, we haven't been briefed at this point.
And on this proposed deal, the president, also the secretary yesterday in his call with Gantz, he mentioned that this proposed deal will unlock a calm on the northern borders. Do you have something substantial? Is there a progress made here with Hezbollah?
So we have had ongoing conversations for some time to try to reach a political solution to the cross-border strikes between Israel and Hezbollah. And we have made progress in those conversations, but ultimately it is our assessment that it's very difficult to reach a solution to that problem without calm in Gaza. Ultimately, all of these problems are interconnected. And as long as there is intense fighting in Gaza, it's very difficult to reach a solution in the north. And that intense fighting also poses other security challenges for Israel. And so we do believe that should we get a ceasefire in Gaza, especially if we can make that a durable ceasefire that ends the war, that is a challenge that we can resolve.
Thank you.
On this,
go ahead.
Did you discuss such a deal or diplomatic resolution for the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah with Hezbollah and Iran?
So I'm not going to get into any conversations. We don't have direct communications with Hezbollah, obviously, but we have been pursuing a diplomatic resolution to this issue for some time.
And one more on Iran. Iran's acting foreign minister said today that the process of negotiations between U.S. and Iran are currently underway, and exchange of messages and consultations continue. Can you confirm that?
I cannot. I will just say that we have always made clear we have the ability to get messages to Iran when it is in our interest to do so, but I'm not going to confirm or read out any specific conversations.
Did you mean that his statement is not accurate?
No, I mean exactly what I said. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a question on the framework that's currently on the table.
Yeah.
Can you say if it's the U.S. expectation that during phase 2 and 3 of the deal, if it's implemented, if Israel would still be able to carry out specific targeted military strikes should a threat emanate from within Gaza?
So I don't want to speak to that in terms of tying it to phase 2 and phase 3, because those are things that are going to have to be negotiated, and the exact parameters of that negotiation. We don't even have a deal for phase 1 yet, so I should refrain from commenting on that. But the president made clear we will always back Israel's right to defend itself, and that remains true. All right, go ahead, Jani.
Thank you, Matt. Two questions. I will follow up again on the last North Korean garbage balloon question. Last time, China sent spy balloons to the United States, but North Korea sent over thousands of garbage balloons to South Korea over the past few days. These garbage balloons contain all kinds of unsanitary germs. There could also be damage to U.S. troops stationed in South Korea. What measures do you think the U.S. and South Korea to take in this regard?
So I will just say that it's obviously quite a disgusting tactic, irresponsible, childish, and it should come to an end. I'll leave it at that.
So you're not condemning?
Of course I condemn it.
Okay.
Absolutely. Condemn any country that sends trash to its neighbor, floats trash over in a balloon to its neighbors.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
If it is an agreement between two countries, that is a very different thing.
Yeah. Do you think this? Yeah. One more. Do you think this is a violation of the UN Security Council?
I would have to consult with people here whether trash carrying balloons. I'm not trying to be flippant. I just have to consult with some people here about whether that's the case.
Also, do you think this action has anything to do with China? China involved?
The trash balloons do?
Yes.
I have not seen any assessment that it does, no.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Thank you, Matt. Very quickly on Ukraine, then I'll move to Georgia. The secretary intending to accompany the vice president in Switzerland at the summit?
I don't have any scheduling announcements to make with that peace summit. You heard the secretary say a number of times over the past few weeks, you heard us say that we would be well represented at that summit, and that's clearly saw that today with the announcement that the vice president will be attending.
Right. President Zelensky called out China for sabotaging that event. Do you share his concerns?
So I will just say that when it comes to the Peace Summit, I'm going to speak for the United States, that we support the Peace Summit. We want it to be successful, and that's why you see the Vice President of the United States attending that summit. We support Ukraine's diplomatic efforts. That said, we have always been clear that China could play a useful diplomatic role in helping resolve this conflict if it wanted to. But that said, right now, it's hard to see how they could play that role, given the actions that we've seen China take over recent months to rebuild, reconstitute Russia's defense industrial base. So we're going to continue to make clear to China that we object to those actions, that we will hold entities responsible for those actions, and we've heard our European counterparts say the same thing.
Thank you. Let's head to Georgia, if I may, where the Kremlin-inspired draft already became the law of the land. The speaker who signed it today was quoted as saying that the Western foundations, are quoting him, are financing organizations that are financing terror, violence, etc. There are other officials who are talking about, clearly shutting down these civil society organizations, clear departure from what they told us their original intention was. Moving forward, how do you expect them to apply the law?
So I'm not going to speak to that. I will say we have been quite concerned about exactly the point you raised, which is that this law moves Georgia away from its democratic trajectory and could stigmatize civil society and stifle the freedoms of association and expression, and that the actions fundamentally alter the U.S. relationship with Georgia. And so that's why we have launched a review of our relationship, and will consider our response to the actions that the government of Georgia has taken.
On that point, the mayor of Tbilisi is quoted as saying that we have, quote unquote, done nothing to be sanctioned. Is he mistaken?
We have announced a new sanctions policy. We have not yet announced individual sanctions, and I'll leave it at that. But we have made clear that we would not hesitate to impose them.
Fair enough. Given what's at stake here, why did the Secretary make no mention of Georgia during his Eastern European trip?
The Secretary just put out a statement announcing an entire comprehensive review of our policy with respect to Georgia that could jeopardize hundreds of millions of dollars of assistance that we provide to Georgia, and as well as announced a new visa restriction policy that you should fully expect to see the United States take action on. I think I'll leave it at that. His commitment to this issue has been quite clear.
Yeah, one more from me, if I may.
Let me go ahead. Sean, that was like 3 or 4. Sean, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I thought you had your hand up before.
Getting back slightly to the Middle East, but staying in Europe, I don't know how many times you get asked about Slovenia. So the parliament is debating recognition of a Palestinian state, of the state of Palestine. It's been put on hold by the opposition. I know in the previous 3 cases, the European countries, you had a reaction coming out. But as it's actually in process, does the U.S. want to tip the scales one way or another, or do you have a position whether Slovenia should go ahead and recognize a Palestinian state?
So look, ultimately we see those steps as not helpful or productive at this time. We have been quite clear that we support the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. The Secretary has been working on actual paths to get us there through diplomacy in the region, but that ultimately that is a step that needs to come not through unilateral recognition, but through direct negotiations between the two parties.
Okay, and Slovenia in particular, is it?
That comment applies to everyone.
Yeah. Can I just ask you briefly about 2 elections? I know you issued statements on them already, but 2 major countries, Mexico and South Africa. I know that there have been statements issued in both, but particularly in the case of South Africa, it seems the ANC for the first time since the end of apartheid is going to lose a majority. The U.S. has a relationship with South Africa, but obviously there have been some ups and downs recently with regard to Russia, with regard to the issues in The Hague. Does the United States anticipate any changes to the relationship with South Africa coming out of this? Anything more to the U.S.'s liking potentially?
So I'd say that we remain committed to deepening our cooperation with South Africa. We cooperate with South Africa on a number of areas, even places where we have differences. There are other areas such as expanding economic prosperity, fighting the climate crisis, ensuring that democracy delivers, where we work quite closely with South Africa, and we would fully expect to do that with the new government. And I do also want to take a note to congratulate the South African people on successful national and political elections. And this maybe won't have resonance for everyone in the room, for the younger crowd in the room, but for some of us older folks, this is now 3 decades of South Africans having the opportunity to exercise the fundamental right to vote, something that seemed difficult and far beyond reach when I was a kid has been achieved, and now we have seen entrenched for 3 decades, and it's, I think, important to highlight that positive development.
Sure.
Continued positive development.
And on Mexico, again, I mean, I know there's a statement issued, but with AMLO, there are quite a few arrangements on migration that have taken place. Is it the understanding that these will continue on with the new administration? Do you anticipate any type of shakeup in terms of the migration protocols with?
So I think we'll let the new the president-elect, take office before we start talking about specific policies. But we do expect to continue our close working relationship with the government of Mexico. We value the special relationship we have with them, and remain committed to working together to advance our mutual economic and security interests. Ryan.
So back in February, the White House announced sanctions on people undermining peace, security, and stability in the West Bank. I'm not sure if you saw, but Senator Chris Van Hollen just suggested that those sanctions ought to apply to Smotrich, who you mentioned earlier today as an obstacle to the peace deal. Is that something that the State Department would consider?
So I make this a rule never to make sanctions announcements or talk about what we're considering before we impose any sanction. And before anyone reads anything into that comment, you shouldn't read that one way or the other. It's just our blanket rule and not talking about possible sanctions.
Quick Pakistan question. I'm not sure if you saw, Imran Khan was acquitted of his previous conviction on the Cypher case. So the only case that he's currently jailed for is what's known as this un-Islamic marriage charge. So the most popular politician in Pakistan is currently in jail because the Pakistani court says that there were not enough menstrual cycles between his wife's divorce and his marriage. So you talked earlier about the Georgia law, and that was undermining Georgian democracy. Why is the State Department willing to weigh in on a law passed through the Georgian legislature, but something insane like this, that's a matter for the Pakistani courts?
So I just don't have any further comment on the case. We look at when we look at different countries, we take into account appropriate context, circumstances in making our judgments. We've addressed the question of Imran Khan many times. The legal proceedings against him are something for the Pakistani courts to decide.
Could that really be
in accordance with their laws and constitution?
But could that really be a matter for the Pakistani courts? Could that possibly be the State Department's position?
It is our position that when you come to these laws in Pakistan and this court case, it is something for the Pakistani courts to decide. And you just saw, to this question, charges against him thrown out by the courts. So, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Regarding the bilateral deal between United States, Saudi Arabia, and Israel that included defense deal between United States and Saudi Arabia and Israel normalization, we have seen that Secretary Blinken in a Senate hearing mentioned that United States and Saudi Arabia are very near to a defense deal. It seems like U.S. is prioritizing its defense deal with Saudi Arabia, but not the ties with the Israel, the basic effort that U.S. led from for the mediation between Saudi Arabia and Israel. So, with this testimony in the Senate hearing, is it like understood that it will be a bilateral deal only with the defense deal between Saudi Arabia and United States, and the normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia is sidelined?
No, the arrangement that we have contemplated, that we have been working on, is a agreement that encompasses 3 parties: the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. There are bilateral pieces between the United States and Saudi Arabia that would be part of that deal, and that's what we have been working on. And then there are other components that are that ultimately involve a path towards a Palestinian state. But I will just say, as part of all of this, you've heard the Secretary say this before, there's one thing that has to happen, well, two things. One I just referred to, the path to a Palestinian state. But the other thing that has to happen before any such arrangement can go forward is calm in Gaza. We don't have calm in Gaza today. We're trying to get to calm in Gaza through this ceasefire proposal, and you heard the President speak to normalization with Saudi Arabia being one of the benefits that it ultimately could unlock.
Then secondly, from the second time in 21 years, United States allowed a jailed Pakistani lady who is facing 86 years of sentence in a Texas jail with the allegations of alleged attacks on U.S. troops in Afghanistan, that is Dr. Afia Siddiqui. So a former Pakistani caretaker government official in a private conversation he revealed that U.S. and Pakistan were very close for a deal, a possible deal between United States and Pakistan that might be a swap deal, basically. So you have any information on that, or is there something behind US and Pakistan or considering that?
So let me take the question. I'm just not familiar with the full details of the case that you mentioned. Go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. A question on Turkey. Today, Turkey Interior Ministry, they removed a recently elected pro-Kurdish party mayor of Hakkari and replaced him with a trustee. Do you have any reaction and comment on that?
So our position on the Kurdistan Workers' Party is well known. It hasn't changed. The PKK was designated as a foreign terrorist organization by the Department of State in 1997. And regarding the specific case you mentioned, I would refer you to the government of Turkey for comment.
And did you say that he was linked with the PKK?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Do you say that he was linked with the PKK?
I'm just speaking to our assessment of the PKK, Rob.
And what's your assessment on that case?
As I said, I don't have any specific comment on it.
And what's your approach to the Kurdish issue in Turkey? It's been a long time.
The approach,
Kurdish issue in Turkey. What's the U.S. approach on?
We have made clear our long-standing position on that many times. I don't have anything to add today. Go ahead here, and then we're going to have to wrap for today.
You said that you would hope that the Israeli law enforcement would follow through in curtailing violence from settlers in the West Bank. However, on Thursday, last Thursday, the Israeli military raided a vegetable market in Ramallah, in El Beira to be specific, but one of the largest vegetable markets in the West Bank, and which lit on fire. And who is going to hold Israel accountable and the Israeli military in this sense? Which law enforcement authority should?
So a few things. First, I can't speak to that specific raid. Obviously, Israel has the right to conduct legitimate anti-terrorism activities in the West Bank. We have seen them do so, but those need to be legitimate. They need to comply with international humanitarian law. But as regards this particular incident, I can't speak to it at all. But that said, when it comes to holding people accountable, we have seen the Israeli government take some actions to police settler violence in the West Bank. We've seen them make arrests. We've seen them hold people accountable. But in our assessment, it hasn't been enough. And so that's why
this wasn't settler.
But I know that's why I'm separating out the two. I can't speak to this one without knowing the details. But when it comes to what I was speaking to, settler violence, they need to do more. And if they don't, we will. Is that clear? And with that, we'll wrap for today. Thanks, everyone.